Thanks for joining us. Once America's dad, now convicted sexual predator Bill Cosby was led away in handcuffs yesterday after being sentenced to 3 to 10 years behind bars. The 81-year-old spent last night in a maximum security prison after being convicted in the first high-profile sexual assault trial to take place since the Me Too movement. And we begin with that as we go behind the headlines with our panel. Joining us, we have film critic and Pop Life host Richard Krause, social media personality Stuart Reynolds, and parent blogger Samantha Kemp-Jackson. Thank you all for weighing in on this. So we all kind of were gripped by this story as it has been ongoing. But when you see a celebrity, somebody who is a celebrity of that stature being led away in handcuffs, it grips people. Well,
part of the thing that I found really interesting yesterday was seeing that bit of footage, him being led away and his mugshot. The mugshot looked to me like something out of a Renaissance painting, someone who is about to meet a terrible fate. You know, I think at that point, Bill Cosby finally realized that the world had crashed down around him. This is a guy who has been famous for 50 years, who has, awards from every university in the United States, probably, and around the world, who's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, has had a life that, people would look up at and say, oh, what an admirable guy, up until all this happened. And then, now that from yesterday until the end of time, when you look him up on Wikipedia, the first thing you're going to see is convicted sexual predator Bill Cosby.
Because of the designation.
Because of the designation. And I think that finally hit him yesterday, if the pictures that we've seen are any indication.
And he's not as Richard just pointed out, this is not a mid-level celebrity. He was so enormous.
What really struck me was when the sentence came out, and it was the sentencing for the jail time. I actually felt sad at first. I was like, well, that's really terrible. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I feeling sad about this? If it was a regular guy, I'd be like, yeah.
Because you were looking at a Huxtable. That's right,
Exactly. Because I think he sort of invested that time growing up and sort of seeing him, certainly through my entire lifetime, watching him perform and being really funny and really entertaining and being this role model. And then seeing this, it's kind of like, oh, I feel kind of betrayed and kind of let down,
It's funny, Sam, and I'll ask you this because at the time, and I was thinking he's such an enormous celebrity. So too was OJ, and obviously very different circumstances, but that too for a lot of people was so sad.
Yeah, I have to say, oh, how the mighty have fallen. It just goes to show that nobody is above the law. And I am so glad in this time of Me Too and the fact that we're talking a lot about sexual assault in the news, it seems like every day, that this predator has gone down. It is way too long beyond when he should have gone down, the number of women that he assaulted, and now he's actually brought up on the charges. I'm glad to see him go to prison. And I'm hoping that a lot of the other alleged and accused offenders go and follow his lead.
And it's, any judge would say they have to look at the facts and depending on how this is all found out. But there's enormous pressure because he's a celebrity, and there's enormous pressure because there's Me Too.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's, when you're dealing with an icon, you sort of deal with them more beyond just a person. It's their body of work. It's everything they've contributed to society, and you sort of feel the pressure of that. But as Sam said, at the end of the day, he's done terrible things. It's time to pay the price.
And right after, I think the family publicist was saying, it was racism, but one of the things that the publicist says was he did such good work. How come no one's talking about that? A little difficult.
Well, it was, except that people talked about it for years. I think part of the thing that has made this story so remarkable for so many people, as we were just saying earlier, pretty much every one of us grew up at some phase of Bill Cosby's career. If it was in the 60s, you watched him on I Spy, maybe it was Fat Albert, or you saw him on the Ed Sullivan Show. In the 70s, it was just more of the same, of that he was ubiquitous as a performer. In the 80s, he ruled television as Dr. Huxtable. He was America's dad. And then in the years since then, he has given speeches about how we should be living our lives, all that sort of thing. He's been given props his entire career. It's the last number of years where these horrible truths have started to come out that he hasn't.
And as we know, it's not over because there's an appeals process. But in addition to that, probably an enormous amount of potential lawsuits to go after is $300 million, or what's left after legal fees.
This isn't over by a long shot.
Okay, so also disturbing in Toronto, a 15-year-old boy was shot and killed in the city's 81st homicide of the year, raising a lot of questions about the safety of citizens in Canada's biggest city. We're talking a lot about gun violence, certainly at the federal level, but it's given people pause to think, and I've had a number of conversations over the last little while, even before this 15-year-old, and Sam, I'll begin with you, about people's feeling really unsafe in Toronto these days.
It's a really sad state of affairs, Bev. I grew up in Toronto. This is my hometown. I've always felt safe here. I do feel safe, but there is a little bit of, looking over my shoulder, and that was something that I never had before living here. It's only in the last few years that I've heard a number of stories like the one we've heard recently about this boy that speaks to the fact that there are more guns on the street in Toronto and in larger Canadian cities. And it is something that we need to address. But definitely, as a native Torontonian, I'm sad, I'm saddened, and I'm a little bit afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. There's nothing really to say apart from the fact that it's absolutely terrible. I think the worst part is that it's a bunch of young people who are doing this and suffering the consequences of this. And I just sort of get this notion, do they not realize the consequences of what they're doing? I've never felt unsafe in Toronto. I still don't feel unsafe in Toronto. But I really hope that this sort of collective consciousness sort of comes together and people realize that this is life or death, literally.
I live right downtown. I hear about these things. My wife, one of the first things she does when she gets up in the morning is check Twitter, and she goes to the police sites and just to see what's happened around us. And I have to tell you, I don't feel unsafe in the city, but like Sam said, I do feel that I have to be vigilant. I have to sort of keep my eye open more than I did. But 81 homicides by shooting is a terrible statistic. We've had bad stretches before in the past where we've had lots of gun violence, and one always hopes that we find a solution to it. We have before, and hopefully we can again.
So I want to get your opinions on this very quickly before we go. It's about a popular meme that a Swedish advertising watchdog is calling sexist. So there it is. Mm-hmm. So you may have seen it before in very different things. So a guy's taking a look at, obviously not his girlfriend, and is being called out. It was used in an advertising campaign for a company to come to the new company because the new company is better than the old company. Right. And Sweden said, you can't do that. Is it sexist?
Yeah, I don't think the meme is sexist on its own. I think that maybe the way they used it was kind of sexist because it was obviously it seems to target males for this job. Yeah. But apart from that, I mean, the meme itself is just, people...
Yeah, it was a tech company.
Yeah. I mean, I think the meme itself is just harmless, silly stupidness, but...
And it's been used for everything. I mean, if you've looked at Twitter more than once in the last year, you've seen it.
That.
I mean, it is used for absolutely everything.
But wasn't that part of the problem? They said you can't make a woman interchangeable like that.
Exactly. That's one of the things that the Swedish ombudsman said, is that essentially we were just saying is that these women are just things. They're being treated like things rather than than humans. I don't know. Some of the memes have made me laugh. Others haven't. I would have thought that at this point, though, with the half-life of anything on the internet being so quick, that this would have disappeared a long time ago.
Certainly ubiquitous. Sam, did you find it sexist?
I do find it sexist, just in terms of what Richard said about women being objectified. But I also think that it's not a good look for both men and women. There are gender stereotypes that are oozing out of this ad. Men can't stop themselves looking at women, the jealous girlfriend, the woman walking along. It's a bit ridiculous. I'm actually kind of sick of this meme, and I want it to go away.
Okay, there you go. The ubiquitous meme might just go away. As you say, the life does end.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, for now. Thank you all for being with us, Richard, Stuart, and Samantha. Appreciate your time. And you can join the conversation and connect with us on social media. You find CTV News on Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat. And you can also connect with me on both Twitter @BD Thompson and Instagram @Beth Thompson. We'll take a short break, but be right back.